In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, January 4th. Two separate bomb blasts, roughly 20 minutes apart in Iran on Wednesday, targeted an event marking the 4th anniversary of the death of a general who was killed in a US drone attack in 2020. Meanwhile, the first session of open forums on government policies began on this Thursday, with 130 members of the public in attendance, calling for measures to cushion the impact of inflation and interest rates. And over in the US, the Federal Reserve is looking to hold its interest rates steady for the time being as it assesses incoming economic data before deciding on the actual timing of interest rate cuts. We start in Iran, where civilian casualties are running in the hundreds following a pair of deadly bombings Wednesday afternoon. Our Yoon starts us off.
At least 95 people have been killed and at least 211 others injured after a series of blasts near the burial site of slain military commander Qasem Soleimani in the Iranian city of Kerman on Wednesday. Iran's state media says at least one of the explosions was caused by a bomb placed in a suitcase inside a car and appeared to have been detonated remotely. The second blast occurred some 20 minutes later when rescuers arrived following the first explosion. The explosion of two bombs came on the 4th anniversary of Soleimani's death in a U.S. airstrike, threatening to increase tensions in the Middle East even more. An earlier death toll of 103 was revised down by Iran's health ministry, which said some names had been repeated on the list of victims. However, with many of the injured in critical condition, the death toll could rise. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said the evil and criminal enemies of Iran had murdered a large number of people in Kerman, adding that the attack will be met with a harsh response. The Ayatollah added that the attacks came as heartless criminals tried to prevent people from visiting the grave of Soleimani. No one has claimed responsibility for the blasts. However, a senior Biden administration official said the blast appeared to represent a terrorist attack of the type carried out in the past by Islamic State militants. The deadly blasts come amid rising tensions in the Middle East after a drone attack in Beirut, which killed Hamas's second-in-command, with Iran-backed Hezbollah saying Israel are responsible for the drone attack earlier this week. The militant group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, said the deaths of senior Hamas leaders would not go unpunished and warned Israel any war in Lebanon would come at a very high cost. Nasrallah, however, stopped short of declaring war against Israel. Yoon, Arirang News.
In Japan, search and rescue operations continue as many are believed to remain trapped under the rubble of Monday's devastating earthquake that has taken some 80 lives, according to the latest tally. Our Chesuyoung reports.
At least 78 deaths have now been reported from the earthquake that hit Ishikawa Prefecture in the west of Japan on the first day of 2024. According to Japanese media outlets on Wednesday, more than 500 aftershocks have been monitored following the magnitude 7.6 quake. Almost 400 people were also injured in Ishikawa Prefecture and neighboring areas. Currently, over 34,000 people are staying in shelters and the damage from the earthquake is severe. Shortly after the earthquake, more than 200 buildings in Wajima City were completely destroyed by fire. Nearby Suji City was hit by a tsunami, submerging areas 100 meters inland. Major roads were cracked down the middle in places, with some cars falling into holes caused by the quake. Many rescue workers with the Japanese Self-Defense Forces have been trying to rescue people from collapsed buildings, and supplies are being transported using helicopters. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says there were more than 130 urgent requests for rescue from collapsed buildings, and it's a race against time.
We will also strengthen our system by more than doubling the number of rescue dogs in the self-defense forces and police, and will do our best to provide emergency life-saving rescue.
Local media outlets say casualties are expected to rise and that there is still a chance of more aftershocks. Moreover, a total of 50 millimeters of rain is forecast until Thursday, raising concerns about landslides. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Here in the local front, President Yoon Suk-yeol has pledged bold and decisive measures to tackle challenges faced by households and small businesses. The pledge was made during the first session of policy briefings held in the format of forums with members of the public. 130 citizens took part in the talks on this Thursday that began with Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok sharing ways to stabilize prices and ensure livelihoods. Many of the participants, including homemakers, young workers and small business owners, called for the need to cushion the impact of high inflation and interest rates, and President Yoon Suk-yeol reportedly urged for more action to address the challenges at hand. An arrest warrant has been issued for the man accused of stabbing opposition party leader Lee Jae-myung. The 67-year-old assailant, surnamed Kim, has been charged with attempted murder. A substantive review of Kim's arrest warrant is underway this afternoon. Earlier on Wednesday, a search warrant was issued for his residence and his real estate agency office in Asan, Chungcheong, Namdo Province. Separately, Lee Jae-myung is currently recovering from surgery at Seoul National University Hospital. In other news, Seoul and Washington are currently engaged in their first combat shooting drill of the year. Now, the 7-day joint exercise kicked off last Friday at a training center in Pocheon City, Gyeonggi-do Province, and seeks to strengthen the Allies' operational capabilities in the wake of a potential severe security situation. Some 110 vehicles, including Seoul's K-1A2 tank and Washington's A-10 attack aircraft, have been deployed. U.S. monetary policymakers have hinted at interest rate cuts for this year, but remain cautious about the timing. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
U.S. Federal Reserve officials agreed that interest rate cuts are likely in 2024, but exactly when remains uncertain. That is according to minutes from the Federal Open Market Committee's December 12th to 13th meeting released on Wednesday. At that meeting, the benchmark rate was kept steady for the third time to maintain a 5.25% to 5.5% range. The decision was also seen as the clearest signal yet of an end to its aggressive rate hike campaign. This came as the FOMC, responsible for setting rates, said its policy had likely reached or was close to its peak for the current tightening cycle. During the two-day session, participants also acknowledged the progress made in the battle to bring down inflation. In fact, consumer prices in the U.S. slowed to a 5-month low in November, with the Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, rising 3.1% on year. The CPI has been slowing after it hit 9.1% in June 2022. 3 rate cuts are expected, each by a 0.25 percentage point by the end of 2024. However, the minutes noted high uncertainty regarding the timing, saying the actual policy path will depend on how the economy evolves. That could mean they are keeping options open, with further monetary tightening potentially on the table as a response to changing economic conditions. December's FOMC minutes also echoed the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell's remarks after the meeting. Powell changed the tune on the central bank's monetary policy, saying the end of the tightening campaign is, quote, in sight. However, he still took a cautionary stance on cutting rates, saying the 2% inflation target is yet to be achieved.
While we believe that our policy rate is likely at or near its peak for this tightening cycle, the economy has surprised forecasters in many ways since the pandemic. Ongoing progress toward our 2% inflation objective is not assured.
Following the reaffirmation of the Federal Reserve stance in recent minutes, U.S. 10-year Treasury yields experienced a decline. It extended losses for a 4th day, topping the 4% mark on Wednesday, indicating growing concerns from investors about the Federal Reserve keeping a hawkish monetary policy for the time being. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Korea's foreign exchange reserves rose for the 2nd month in a row in December. According to the Bank of Korea on this Thursday, the reserves, a barometer of financial stability, totaled $420.1 billion at the end of December, up over $3 billion from November. Seoul Central Bank is linking the expansion to the weakening greenback, which lost some 1.5% last month against major currencies. Meanwhile, as of the end of November, South Korea was the world's 9th largest holder of foreign exchange reserves. Hyundai Motor Company and affiliate Kia Corporation posted record sales in the U.S. last year on the back of greater demand for electric and hybrid vehicles. According to Hyundai Motor America on Wednesday, local time, over 801,000 cars were sold in 2023, an 11% surge on year. In December alone, sales jumped 4% on year, with some 75,000 vehicles sold. Kia also noted all-time high sales of around 782,000 last year, up 13% on year. Back here in Korea, about 4 out of 10 households are single-person households here. According to Seoul's Interior Ministry on this Thursday, the total number of households as of December 2023, that is single-person households, registered stood at over 9.9 million, up more than 211,000 on year, accounting for 42% of all registered households. This ratio is higher than that shared by Statistics Korea, which calculated single-person households accounting for some 34%. A team of Korean researchers has reported some tangible progress in the treatment of Parkinson's disease. Our Chung Won-ju explains.
Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest boxers in history, suffered from Parkinson's disease, a disorder that leads to slower movements, tremors, and muscle paralysis. The disease's motor symptoms result when a specific area of the brain degenerates. This is due to a shortage of dopamine-secreting cells. Symptom relief is the best option, and a cure is yet to be found. South Korean researchers, however, may have found a way to treat Parkinson's using stem cells obtained from human embryos. They are cultivated for over a week and grown into millions of cells. When a signaling molecule is introduced to a part of it, protrusions extend out and take on the appearance of nerve cells secreting dopamine. The purity of these dopamine-secreting cells is 99.57%, significantly safer compared to the 90% purity achieved by research teams in the US and Europe.
We developed a process of differentiating embryonic stem cells into dopamine cells using only small molecules, allowing us to obtain a high yield of dopamine cells and carry out mass production through three-dimensional cultivation.
When the developed cells were injected into mice with dopamine cell damage from Parkinson's disease, dopamine was regenerated, completely curing motor impairment in 16 weeks. Based on animal experiment results, the research team have come up with an appropriate dosage for humans. Starting in May, the research team entered clinical trials involving developed dopamine cells being given to actual Parkinson's patients. Chung Won-ju, Arirang News.
On the football field in Paris on Wednesday local time, midfielder Kang-in opened the scoring for the Paris Saint-Germain's victory over Toulouse to win the French Super Cup. Now, he found the net just 3 minutes into the game before teammate Kylian Mbappe added a second goal for the team's 2-0 victory over Toulouse and a record 12th Super Cup title. Now, Kang-in is set to join Team Korea in the UAE on Friday ahead of the Asian Cup in Qatar, as Korea seeks its first title in 64 years. And Korea recorded its highest annual average temperature last year. Relevant government authorities say the country's average temperature in the year 2023 stood at 13.7 degrees Celsius, the highest since the year 1973, when related data was first compiled. Separately, global weather experts have forecast that the year 2024 may be the hottest in recorded history. Up next, my colleague Song Yoo-jin sat down with the head of the UN Refugee Agency's Korea office for her thoughts on efforts to address the plight of those displaced in the wake of armed conflict, natural disaster, as well as rampant persecution. Do take a listen.
A very challenging year. That's how Chun Hae-kyung, the representative of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees Korea, describes the year 2023. Last year, the world saw a record number of more than 114 million people displaced, including refugees and asylum seekers.
We have seen the situation in Ukraine continue to evolve. We have seen Sudan evolving a situation there, Gaza, as we still see on the news, and then also like earthquakes.
As the first Korean national to lead the UNHCR's Korean office, Ms. Chun brings over 2 decades of experience in refugee and humanitarian work. Her journey began with listening to stories about the Korean War growing up.
Our parents' generation worked so hard to build the country, right? So, and I grew up outside Korea when I was a child, so I was also very much interested in minority issues, right? So I did study refugee migration issues, and I think naturally I ended up in the UN.
Looking ahead, she hopes things will get better in the new year.
Hopefully, politics and humanitarian assistance can be divided so that we could work in the areas where people need our assistance.
And she sees a significant role for South Korea in addressing these challenges.
It has substantially increased its ODA share, and there has been very positive pledges to UNHCR, but also to other agencies, right, and organizations. And also we see that with the Republic of Korea joining the UN Security Council 24 and 25.
Beyond governmental efforts, last December, 8 religious groups in Korea submitted the first ever joint pledge of its kind to the UNHCR's Global Refugee Forum. From this year, Ms. Chun will take up a new role as the director of the UNHCR Regional Bureau for Asia and the Pacific. Describing her term in Korea as rewarding, she recalls working on the country's lack of universal birth registration.
If you're a foreign parents born baby here, you know, like you don't, the Korean government doesn't register you, right? So there have been a lot of work in the past years, and you know, related legislation has been under discussion now. So the reason why I started joining the UN, and 20-something years later, I come back to Korea and I am working on the same issues, right?
Senses the gravity of the greater responsibility, Ms. Chun says she is ready.
I think in the region we have many states with different interests, but when it comes to refugees, as it was shown at the Global Refugee Forum, hopefully we can come together and I can be a constructive bridge to do that.
송유진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Russia and Ukraine announced on Wednesday that they have exchanged almost 500 prisoners of war. It is the first prisoner swap in nearly 5 months and the largest documented swap of soldiers so far in the conflict. Ukraine said 230 prisoners of war, including 6 civilians, returned home from Russian captivity, while Russia saw the release of 248 military personnel by Ukraine. The United Arab Emirates was involved in the exchange and said its strong friendly relations with both Moscow and Kiev allowed it to mediate the complex POW swap negotiation. Ukraine's military intelligence agency also praised the UAE's efforts. Kiev and Moscow have exchanged prisoners on a number of instances since the war began in February 2022. In Mexico, 31 kidnapped migrants have been rescued by Mexican state authorities. Mexico's Interior Minister confirmed on Wednesday their safe rescue. In the state of Tamaulipas, near the U.S. border on Saturday, unknown gunmen kidnapped 31 migrants who were on a bus heading from Monterrey to the border town of Matamoros. The migrants, mostly from Latin American countries such as Venezuela and Ecuador, were then forced off the bus into 5 vans. Tamaulipas Governor Americo Villarreal Anaya stated that the National Guard and the armed forces brought the kidnapped migrants to safety. A record number of migrants traveled from Central America and Mexico, attempting to reach the United States in 2023. Human rights groups have been warning of an escalating kidnapping crisis in Mexico's Tamaulipas border region. Chinese carmaker BYD overtook Tesla as the world's top-selling electric car maker in the final quarter of 2023. BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams, outsold Tesla in battery-only full electric cars for the first time in the fourth quarter last year, selling 526,000 to Tesla's 484,000 units. Sales of BYD EVs benefited from having a lower price point than Tesla. Warren Buffett-backed BYD said it produced 3.02 million new energy vehicles, or NEVs, in 2023, of which 1.6 million are battery-only electric vehicles. This puts BYD only slightly behind Tesla's 1.84 million fully electric cars produced in the same period. The Rolex Sydney-Hobart yacht race came to a close on Wednesday as the last boat crossed the finish line carrying a cat named Ollie. Ollie and his owner Bob Williams' boat, named the Sylph 6, was the oldest boat in the race and received a warm welcome and cheers as it came into the Constitution dock with Ollie up on the deck to greet his fans. The Sylph 6 left Sydney for Hobart on December 26th with a crew of 4, including Ollie the cat. Before that, Ollie and Williams had sailed around the country for the past 5 years, even across the Tasman Sea to New Zealand. Williams described Ollie as my friend and mate. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Yesterday's wintry precipitation brought colder air to the country. We had a much colder start to the day than Wednesday, but was still warmer than norms, and highs are rising fast to go up higher than Wednesday afternoon. Warmer than averages mean dustier air most of the time, and today is no exception. Stagnant airflow will push ultrafine dust levels up in most parts of the country again. Don't forget to mask up. We had sunny skies to start off the day with some fog, and then upper parts of the country are seeing cloudier skies this afternoon, while the rest of the country is having sunny skies and will remain sunny all day today. Afternoon temperatures are a couple of degrees higher than Wednesday across Korea. It will continue to stay warmer than norms through Friday, then this weekend looking like being freezing cold for any outdoor plans. So please do layer up, but it will not be unbearably cold. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. And those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. We return with our panel session in a few minutes.